away in order to introduce him this morning, and he said, just tell him I come from out the bush. So that's Graeme's story. He is really an elder of the Paccoa tribe. As he said last night, he is the only one of our life members who's here at the conference this year, and we're really honoured and really proud to have him with us. And Graeme's worked for 31 years in corrections, 10 years of which have been in the Cross Borders program that he's going to talk to us about this morning. So welcome, Graeme. Thank you very much for coming and honouring us with your presence. Graeme, I believe, is something of an honorary black fella. And that's a pretty special honour for a white Anglo-Saxon man. So it's pretty special that he's here with us today. So please give him a warm welcome.
Thanks for that introduction. Firstly, I'd just like to pay my respects to the local custodians of the land here, their elders, past and present and future. I guess I'm pretty lucky in a lot of ways because I live in Alice Springs, or Mabantua in the Aranda language, so it's central Aranda country, that's where I live in. Also, as you can see shortly, that work on the Nunajara, Pitjantjatjara, Yunkajarra lands, so, which is obviously what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today, and give you a little bit about the background of that area, the people that live out there, and then also tell you a little bit what we're doing out there for the last 10 years now. So, all right, let's so we'll start off with Wangkara, Kulini, Wanti, Waltja, Punganyi. What does all that mean? Talking in a group about stopping family violence. So first up, I'll apologise for some really bad use of Pitjantjatjara. I'm not that good at speaking the language, but it gives the people a good laugh out there, and they love teaching me more and more about it. In that way, it's called Napaji, because if we're going out there doing stuff on traditional Aboriginal lands in that area, we're teaching something, but they're also teaching us in return. And without that happening, we wouldn't have got the program anywhere near where we are today. Now, if anybody speaks the Queen's English fluently, I'll also apologise in advance for that as well. So, right, this is the small area that we cover across the 3 states. Of course, the languages don't have those states, boundaries like we do. So that's the area. It's about 500,000 square kilometres roughly. It's about a dozen communities in it. The area that we actually cover is the tri-state justice area. It's an area that was set up between the governments of NTSA and WA because justice service was done extremely badly from all the 3 states in that particular area. So the idea was to create better court services, better police services, and better correction services, including juvenile justice across those areas. So conversations of that happened approximately 12 years ago now, and legislation was enacted, I think roughly about 7 years ago. So we were up and going before this actually formally took place. But it enables the police and, as I was saying, all those agencies, including prisons, to work the area. So in theory, if somebody is arrested in one state, they can go to the courts and have all their matters dealt with at one time. And in theory, land at the nearest prison to that, which may not be necessarily be the state or territory that they were convicted in. That's the theory behind it, but as you know, prisons are full. But it certainly works pretty well across police cooperation and corrections cooperation on the fields. That's some of the stuff that we've developed to work in this lands. Now, what I'm lucky is that I've got a really good group of dedicated people who want to work in this area. As I was saying, there's probably about 12 communities. The largest one is Warburton in Western Australia. It's about 1,000 people there. The next one would probably be 500 people. It's about 6,500 people across the lands. There are about 5 languages that we deal with, prominently Ngarrindjara, Pitjantjatjara, Wangkara, hence the NPY lands, which I'll just call it the lands. But there's also Pindabi and Luritja. Now the Pindabi people were the last people, if you like, to have come out of the desert. And that wasn't basically that long ago, it's only in the 70s. So in this area, all the culture of the people is quite intact in a lot of ways. But of course, colonisation still had a huge effect on what's going on out there, because you'll notice some of the places, if I were to take it back, have double names, you know, Ernabella, Bukatja, so forth. And so some of them are missionary names, some are station names, Kalkaji, Freegon, these sorts of areas. And Everard Park was an old station, it's now Memley, so in South Australia. So our crew basically travel quite a lot of distance. We've got 3 troop carriers. They do about 25,000 kilometres a year each between the teams that go out. So at the moment I've got 3 teams out in 3 communities, 1 in each state. One crew is at Warrakuna, which is on the edge of NT-WA border. Another crew down at Armata in South Australia, and another lot in Kintor, which is once again almost on the WA-NT border differently. I've got about 8 staff that work for me, and they don't have a life and look to me to give them a good life. So I want older people, generally is what I've got, that are prepared to go bush for 4 weeks at a time. So we work basically on an 8-week rotation, a week in the office, and that's loading up, getting organised. We have a number of files that we put together. We work closely with the NPY Women's Council, so we'll get some feedback from them from the women's perspective. Being part of corrections, we get some corrections reports, so we have histories and police reports. And then these guys will head bush for 4 weeks at a time. So the program is basically run every day for about 4 hours a day in the community. So this is either Mondays to Fridays for 3 weeks, or Monday to Thursday, and then the following 3 days. So there's 15 sessions to it, which we'll talk about later on. Our crew are a mixed bag of lollies, Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal, male, female. I think we've got about 8 all up that we all work on various lengths of contracts. And as I said, it's a week in the office, 4 weeks out bush, a week in the office and 2 weeks off, and they earn their 2 weeks off. The community, the accommodation is pretty variable. So you can have the luxury of the Warburton Roadhouse, which we're probably paying about the same price as what we're staying here, except the luxury's not quite the same level. Even there's snakes in the room for Maura, just to pique up her interest in the local flora and fauna, but when she went out there with us. But other areas, we have a house that we might share in the community. So when we're going out into these communities, we're very much role models, because you're part of the community, you're going down to the local store, people, you're very visible, because some of the, as we were saying, these communities get down to only a couple hundred people at a time. And obviously you get to understand what's going on. But we're also guests on the land, so you've got to be very mindful of who you are and what you're doing. Because there's plenty of seagulls on the land, and this is not the ones that usually around the seasides that you see, and I think most people know what a seagull is. They're a white bird that fly in, squawk, eat, shit on the place and leave. And they usually come in white government Toyotas, so. And I don't know if you've spent a lot of time in Aboriginal communities, a myriad of different services coming and going. And sometimes I wonder if the actual residents really understand what they're all doing there. Anyway, and I was very frightened when I started this up 10 years ago, after giving up my nice permanent government job in NT Corrections, which right at the moment I'm quite happy to say I don't work there. But to take on contract and to last 10 years, and I now really feel that I've actually fulfilled my promise to a lot of those elders that allowed me to start this program. The other person that we had when we kicked off was a guy by the name of Gary Wright. He's a fella that's probably about opposite to me in a lot of ways. He's a vegetarian to start with, so. But we had a lot in common in the same way. So he had the simple job. He had just to write the program, and I just had to manage the logistics. So that's how we actually divided it up. And so there's a program that I was involved with for 3 years before that in the Northern Territory. So we used that as the backbone, and then he put a lot more of the narrative therapy into the program. Looked at a lot of what are the resources that are available and the local history, did all the research to put a lot of that into the program. And later on, we've actually added a cultural foundation to the program as well. So, but without Gary, we wouldn't have kicked off, and he stuck around for about nearly 2.5 years and certainly fulfilled his promise as well. So yeah, the staff I have, they're very dedicated. And the one thing they actually have is they all have a really good relationship with the people, with Aboriginal people, because if you haven't got that, then rack off. Don't waste their time or yours. It's because relationship is everything, and just mutual respect. So, all right. This is what we actually talk about. So I guess the bottom line is these people really don't need somebody else coming in and telling them how to run their lives. So the only thing we actually really message that we have is stop the violence. So what we tend to do is we get these fellas to have the confidence to ask a hell of a lot of questions of us, of all those government visitors they see, of whatever they've got around them. Just feel confident in yourself to ask questions. And as we're going through a lot of this stuff, everything that we do is very visible because, once again, you know, English is about their third language. So it'll be a mixture of Bintjarra, Yunkajara, you know, because it could be a couple of those fellas in the same group, and English going around. But the good thing about group work, because ideally we want 10 to 12 men, is that they all help each other, and that's the idea. So we sort of say that what we're doing is that you've got a bit of a car, it's a little bit rubbish car, and you want to fix it, but you've also got a car as well. It's got a few problems. We're not going to tell you how to fix it. We've got this big box of tools here. We're going to talk about the tools, and you're going to work out what's the right tool to fix your problem with your car. Okay, that's sort of how we explain what we're actually doing. But to do that, we really do have to go back and talk about some of the history of, well, for Aboriginal people, it's beyond colonisation. So we start talking about that, and then we talk about colonisation. And a lot of these fellas don't realise their own local history on how they actually got there, or generally had the opportunity to talk about it, and the effects it has on them and where they're at. So you go backwards to move forwards. So that's, I guess, part of narrative therapy that we have. We also have a little bit of CBT because we will make a plan. We'll make a plan with them, and because some of these guys can't write, some of them are really good at stuff. They're better educated than I am, but so you've got a whole mixture of these people. But we do have a simple plan that we'll do. Well, one, how are you going to stay away from violence? Let's put it down in the plan. And two, let's do something for yourself, for you and your family, that you can achieve in a short amount of time. Let's step that out so you can just start thinking about planning. All right, so there are 15 sessions. We do an introduction. We talk about violence, the traditional ways and now. We talk about responding and recognising anger. We talk about motivation, the dynamics of violence and change. We talk about how it affects the families and the communities. We talk about alcohol and drugs. On this session here, we're kind of lucky in South Australia now because DASA have got themselves organised up there. So we introduced them into our program and be able to give them some opportunity to talk beyond that. So we talk about reputation and change and racism. You ask these guys about racism, have you ever know what racism, ever felt racism? And they'll generally tell you no. And I can tell you, that's not quite true. So then you start unpacking it and then you start talking in scenarios. Oh yeah, that's happened. So, and then controlling behaviours. So you'll see a lot of these similarities to speakers that we had yesterday and even Tony this morning. And then we talk about trust. Can trust be repaired? Ways of speaking and listening, fathers and fathering, so, which is very important on the way to end. So where we're at the moment, we're up to 82 programs in the communities across the 3 states. So this is only in the communities. So at this stage, when they complete the program in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully they're all complete. Unfortunately at the moment, there's a young fella died at Armada as a result of a motorbike accident, and consequently sorry business is happening. So that shuts down, it can shut the community down. I'm not too sure where it's at, to be honest, at the moment. I think sometimes we're lucky enough, the elders will say to us, look, you keep going in the morning, these fellas will come and do their stuff with us in the afternoon. So, so I think we'll be okay to finish the program out there, but you know, it was end of week 1, so you're stuck in the middle of no man's land. It's not as if you can go off somewhere else and do another program. So thankfully, we've been around long enough to have a little bit of mutual respect, and they actually want us there to doing what we're doing with their blessing. And basically, without their help, I wouldn't have got going in the first place, because they're ones that made the introduction to me. The only reason they did that is that I've been travelling that around that area something like 25 years. So it's pre-existing relationships for me, even across the border, that Stanley Douglas in particular from Armada took me around, got me started, and he was our first cultural broker. So yeah, and away we went. Without court orders, we wouldn't have got going either, if we relied on volunteers. Well, that's kind of true in a way, because best laid plans fall leg up, don't they? So what, on the first program, we went out to court at Armada. Beautiful, back next week. Of course, we didn't quite get to court, it rained. Cancelled the court. So I thought, oh, what do we do now? So we went out to the court list, grabbed all the blokes off the court list and said, boy, have we got a deal for you. And that's how we got our first program going. So a little bit of coercion there, maybe. But as you can see, our attendance rate is pretty high. In actual fact, that's overall over the 10 years. But so we'll have put over 500 blokes who will have completed the program at the end of it in about a fortnight's time. And our attendance rate's around about 95% now, because we're just that long in the community. Right, what I'm actually going to show you is some write-ups of an actual program they've done. Now this program is at Fink, Apatula in the Northern Territory. So first up, you'll see some photos of some blokes later on to this. These guys were all volunteers. the community actually invited us down to down there to say, look, we've got a problem. We don't have courts and stuff down here, but we want you to come down and talk about violence with us. So we had a guy by the name of Robert Houston, who was a local elder and his ex-police aide, and he just said, you'll come and do a program with me, and they did. Now that sort of influence, you can't buy, can you? So these guys, there was about 10 in the thing, fronted up and completed the program. We were going to run another program in Waltja, which is basically at the base of Ayers Rock. That fell over, and we went back and we ran another one back in Paccoa again. So as you'll see, they've got a sense of humour as well. But one of the first things we do is set out some group rules. So this is the smokers, you can see them everywhere. But basic stuff in it. The calendar, this is working on the days, and then you'll see that once again in this program, something happened somewhere. Public holiday and a funeral, so it got extended. Okay. Right, so what we do is try to get people to talk, because these guys are a little bit shy, a bit like me, and so we have a kind of a systematic way of doing it. So as you can see, where most of these guys were born, their home is Paccoa, Udnadata, not far down the road, another couple of 100 k, but not far. And of course, a couple of facilitators that are here as well. So everybody goes on it. Malu is kangaroo, right? So what's your favourite food? And turkey's bush turkey, Australian busted, okay? Music. Now these guys, they're all living in a small community, thinks probably a couple hundred at the most. They all know each other pretty well, right? Well, they sort of do and don't. So when you ask them what sort of music they play and they enjoy, and most people dob each other in and say, oh, you like that? And they'll say, no, I ain't listening to that crap because you're always listening to it. I actually like this, and so even though they're quite often related to each other and that, they don't know as much as they do, but the good thing about that though, they all know what skills each other has. So if I want to know a skill about this person over here, I'll ask this one here and they'll say, hey, he's a good footballer or good mechanic or good, yeah, so. AFL plays a big role across the NPY lands. Love the football and they're damn good at it too. Then we start them to say who they admire, and you'll see this Robert guy fronts up. This is Robert Houston that I was telling you about. Nearly always it'll be family, it'll be Jamu, grandfather, so. And then this is really tricky. What do you want to do in the future, all right? This is starting, and then they start thinking about it, all right? And you see most of the language is Wangkara. And then we ask them, a few of their likes. We also now ask them, what do you want to do in a couple of years' time? And that's a long way away for these guys quite often. So you can't, to have talking in a number of different languages, basically you'll need to have a little bit of education happening. And you need to get an understanding. If we're talking about violence, what are the different types of violence that we're having? So, and here we are. This is what they've come up and named with. We're a bit smarter these days. We've got these in posters and fill the posters in, but these were all done by hand in the earlier days. And this is, quite typical of what and you can see they really don't miss too much. Not, they'll put it out there. And ideally, you've got to have that safe feeling in this room, and all the confidentiality, etc. going on. But ukari is ganja, drugs. Okay, the cultural foundation. So this is, it's also probably explains, you know, a bit earlier, you know, Tony raised, why doesn't she leave? For all the same reasons. This actually almost explains why women won't leave Aboriginal men, because they don't want to leave really, generally. They just want the violence to stop. That's the bottom line. And they won't leave because it is their home and their country, it is their family, their spirit belongs there, and the values and belief system actually belongs there. So we actually show a film called Kulini, which is connectedness. All this connects together. So if one of this goes out of balance, then other things will go out of balance. So if we put this up as a diagram up on the wall, then this is the bit that, you know, they'll teach us about for their community, because each community is slightly different. Say, all right, is this right? You know, get the conversation going, and they'll all agree on this is right. So this is where we've put up in the local words, you know, Waltja being family, Jukapa, Nuru, Kurumpa. So we're talking about, so in a sense what we're doing is we're talking about an individual in a collective society, taking him out, throwing him in a group of people, and then eventually we'll put him back in that society. And so we start here by saying, here's your actions, your body, your feelings, and your thinking. So later on, when we start talking about the cycle of violence, and you see that up on the wall, it makes sense to them. Now, this is a pretty rough drawing, and we're actually better at it with, you know, what do you call it? When you got like a DVD, it's external drives hooked up to laptops and whatever now. But we actually talk about the timeline. So you got the Aboriginal timeline, the Anagu timeline, and the whitefella timeline. And we talk about the intersection and what it actually meant and the impact that it actually had on people, which, of course, was horrific. We've got a fellow by the name of Wanti Pickety. Wanti is man, I'm Wanti, ladies, Pungas. Pickety, angry man. So we look at a number of films, DVDs, might only be sections of them, and we'll pull them apart. We'll sort of say, this is a commercial film, what's the aim of this film? It's to make money, it's to do this, it's to do that. This is a documentary. What is it about? It's to teach somebody, it's an awareness, that sort of thing. So look at the motivation behind the films and ask questions. Well, what is that film? What, you know, what's it actually doing? So here's Wanti Pickety is a fictional fella. So we want to look at this fella and say, all right, what is he actually doing? Let's look at him and why is he angry? What's happened beforehand? What's going on with his journey? What's his future going to look like? And so we start, and these are the answers that these guys have, all the excuses, if you like, of what's happening. And we start talking about this stuff about choice. So in order to do this, we get these fellas to start talking a little bit about their feelings, what's going on. So you're starting to get a bit fired up here. What's going on for you? Let's express it. Let's get you to draw it, and you can see that what people have driven. You know, the old heart starting to pound, stomach's getting tight, all tense here. You know, fists are curling, shaking, sweating, getting hot in the head, steaming up. So what we've kind of saying here now is that if you recognise these feelings, you're starting to get to know yourself. This is a time for you to slow yourself down, take a bit of time, step back if you can, and think about, you know, what's happening for you. So, cycle of violence, everybody recognises that. It's slightly different words, but it's deciding to stop. So what we're starting to say is if you're starting to feel those feelings, let's catch it as early as we can, and let's start making a plan. change your thinking, change what you're doing, change what's happening in your body, start slowing it down. So this is where you're actually making decisions, and you can actually be in control of yourself. It's about being, in the words, be in action of being boss of yourself. So it's no point, the excuses, this is where the excuses start dropping off. Once again, everything's connected, and you got this, all this stuff will go up on the walls, and by the end of the 15 days, it's a fair bit hanging up and around the place. But it also acts as a reminder, because everything that you want to do is visual, and visual or some really poor acting, a bit like me now actually. But anyway, so what we're doing is having men's conversations in a safe place for these guys to get all these questions out, and hopefully we provide a whole lot of tools for them that they can actually use, get an understand of what's going on. So if you've got older blokes in the room, and some of them have been to jail, they'll say, yeah, this is what happens, because I ended up in jail, I come back, I get strife, go in again, and they acknowledge what's going on. So motivation, the thing about violence, it actually works for a short term. It actually gets you what you want. Short-term gain, long-term pain, if you like to put it that way. But it does give you power and control. But if you decide to have violence, then we're actually getting people to look at what's the effect it has on others. We're getting people to, by looking at Wanti Pickety, you're starting to look at what he's actually doing, starting to get people to stand in somebody else's shoes. And later on, by the end of the week, Wanti Pickety's gone out the window, and the eyes start taking, oh, I've done this, I've done that. A little bit more subtle, but yeah. There's all the barriers, that's like a brick wall. Let's put all the excuses up there, name Aaron Street, bad attitude, no respect, humbugging, humbugging people for money, cigarettes, teasing, name calling. There's a DVD that we watch, it's a commercial one. It's from 3 blokes going from Wolf Creek to Wyndham, but it's actually quite good. It talks about 3 different people. Rudy's a German fellow who's an adventurer. I don't know if some people have seen it, and it just, all these different barriers coming their way. Jack is an Aboriginal fellow who's basically from this area, but he's starting to get into an area that's not his country, so which is tricky because he doesn't know the spirits, he doesn't know the stories and the dreamings to take him that next step across somebody else's country. But his motivation for doing it is against the grog, the walk against grog. So, and Dave is a Yank that's got all the technology in the world that he's going to win the race from these guys. But yes, it's partially fictional, but it's certainly bit of something to get people to look what's happening to these guys. All have problems where I think they're insurmountable. Then they work through them and still move forward by just changing little plans that they might have made. So what we're saying is, you make a plan, it mightn't necessarily work, let's revisit it a bit, but you can still achieve it at the end. I'm sure everybody's seen this as the ripple effect. You toss a rock into the billabong and whatever. So we're talking about the effects of violence, and this is where we're starting to really get home here, is here's the person, let's break it down in your community of what's happening. Who gets involved? Uncle, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, and then your close mates, your cousins, your nephews, your nieces, grandmother, grandfather, friends. Then it starts here, Department of Correctional Services, police, nurse, clinic, court, welfare, elders, culture, hospital, council, school, store, teachers. So the ripple effect gets out to witnesses, parole, flying doctor, you know, the women's shelter, the homelands, doctors, judges, lawyers, legal aid, prison. So then they realised that the one small issue or one event has this big effect on their community. So we're starting now to say, when we're questioning things, so what do you actually want your community to look like? And where do you fit in? What are you going to do about it? So some of the stuff that, it's amazing also how much these guys are interested in how the brain works and how they take this on board. And we do all the good stuff with, you know, the grog goggles and stuff like that, have a bit of fun as well. This is the Menzies School of Health Planning. You'll see it on the website. So what we actually do is we get guys to in pictorial form, to say, this is what our worries are. This is our support people, our 5 people. This is, you know, if we're healthy, this is what we want to be and where we're going to be, okay? And we'll laminate that and I'll keep that as at the end of the program. And we also, on part of that, we also set there the couple of goals in here as well. Get into the controlling behaviours. This is what it's all about, you know, and it's no denying that. And jealousy, this is huge in the communities. In jealousy, they're only victims, because, you know, any part of jealousy, and this is eventually where people get to, is that there's a victim 1 and a victim 2 or more. And this is how this community at that time described their jealousy, but it's different from community. And then we start talking about trust and fear and you know, can we ever rebuild that trust? And sometimes the answer is no, and these blokes will arrive at that themselves. But can they have a respectful relationship? Well, maybe through others they can. But the biggest motivation, ultimately, is children. Because we have some of these little DVDs where the children are copying exactly off the men. And we also have some DVDs, there's another one called Loves Me, Loves Me Not. And if you've ever seen that, it's a really tough thing to view. But by this stage, these blokes are in somebody else's shoes looking at that DVD. And it's, you know, and you can see that the tears are in the eyes of these guys and thinking, whoa, I don't want to be part of that. And then, so we're starting to talk about what does an argument look like and how to talk respectfully to each other. And then ultimately, fathers and fathering, we're talking about growing up. As an Aboriginal person, if you grow up, this is what happens in all these different timelines. As a white fella, they happen differently. However, you know, these blokes then want to be something better as a father. They want to be a role model, and it's not, you know, as I think Tony said earlier, being a friend to their kids. They actually want, these guys want to part their culture onto the thing. They have a lot to give, and that's what they've realised here, the culture, spirituality, traditions, all of that. That's what the program will look like in the thing, and that's, as you can see, the map, the Aboriginal map of Australia for all the different languages. So some of the awards that we've sort of done, yeah. Whole group of people at Warburton this was, and this is a different group of facilitators and those weird looking shirts that we got on. That's where to find us. This is some of the nice bits in the backyard. How good is this? Mind you, the road's a bit rough there. But we get to see some fantastic country, and what's really nice is when these people at the end of the program, they'll take you somewhere special and show you something, And that's halfway around in the middle of our backyard as well too. Well, thank you.
Graeme, you talked about successful completion. I was just wondering how you define successful completion and what type of recidivism rate you might have. Do you have people coming back to the program for a second time?
Yeah, we do, and some of them will volunteer to come back as well. In South Australia, we actually followed 5 communities over a period of 5 years, and basically 80% of them, or 79.5%, is part of the report done by the Australian Institute of Criminology, which hopefully will be on the evaluation, will be on the website very, very soon. Didn't reoffend, but we do have people that do come back, obviously. Probably another 10% are probably stuffed up, and I'll say that. I guess the difference between 10 years ago and now is that 10 years ago, men would say, I'm Wanti, she's my conga, it's my right. That stuff's pretty near gone. And the police will tell you that, and it's good coming from police, because if police reckon your program's ordinary, they'll say, your program's shit, mate, but that's what they'll tell me it is. So, and to get that feedback from them. Also, one of the magistrates reminded me is that, as a white ribbon ambassador, you know that one woman a week at least, is dying. 10 years ago, there were 2 deaths a year on the lands. The last death we had in the lands was about 4 years ago now, and that was actually at a roadhouse, on the Stewart Highway at Uganda. But one of the magistrates reminded me of that pretty stark fact, and I thought, oh hell, which I just didn't even think about. Yeah, but we obviously will welcome them back, or some, and we're only in the community generally once a year, which is pretty sad. And the downside is the follow up. If they're on some sort of correctional orders, well, there is some follow up. So that's a good thing about having mandated orders, is carrot and stick approach. Last one of the programs fell over, so just recently our crew went out and interviewed a whole lot of men and women, and got a whole lot of feedback, which is very positive. Actually, I'll just tell you one little scenario though. Is recently there's a woman and a bloke rolling up to the program, and the lady was coming every day, sitting in the car waiting for the guy to do the program. We thought, holy hell, this is power and control going on here, isn't it? They've driven from about 20 k's away to attend the program. They've only had a little kid 12 months ago, and so we got the local DV police officer, and also Amanda was one of the facilitators to go and ask, you're right, mate. Oh yeah, I'm just making sure he's here. Thought, oh, that's all right. Yeah. And then later on she had to go in Alice Springs because the little kid had problems and come back. And then after that, Amanda went and had a chat to her separately away from him, and this was about a week after the program had finished, and she just sort of said, have you noticed any difference? Is there any signs of change, sort of stuff? Oh yeah, he's actually helpful now. He actually gets up and to the kid in the morning. He actually changed the nappy, and one of the things that really hit home, and she said, and my milk's flowing better for the breastfeeding. And I'm thinking, well, hell, she's not as nervous and frightened anymore. So you can't get much better feedback than that, actually. But yeah.
Brad,
yeah.
You mentioned earlier on that the white man's seagull tends to turn up in the government Toyota
and I'm one of them.
And float around.
Squawk.
Squawk around.
Sorry.
Part of the Indigenous community is self-teaching, as you were saying, that you were teaching them, they were teaching you.
Yep.
Is there any plans in the future for these guys that have been through the program to actually start delivering it themselves so that they can teach their own community down the track?
We try to hire cultural brokers where we can. We're not necessarily that successful at doing that, and there's in an ideal world, yeah, it'll take a while for generational change. I think if you reckon Whitefella's got a generation gap, these guys got a big one in there between the elders and where they go. So it's the next group that are coming through that I think there is quite a bit of hope, but it'll in this particular area, it'll take a little bit for that to happen. But I think it will get there, yeah. I mean, a lot of other services are improving too, the houses and everything else, because, you know, to buy a litre of fuel at Kintor is $2 a litre, you know, so Warburton's probably worse.
It's not a question.
Righto, Maura, hit it with it.
Well, it is. I was just going to ask you, Graeme, if you wanted to mention about the women's program at all.
We're probably out of time.
No, just
Well, briefly, we do one. The only reason we did one is because the old women in the community hit me up and said, what you're doing with those blokes, we want you to do for our women. We struggled with it in the community, but we do run it in the prison because unfortunately when we started off in Alice Springs, there was only 10 women in the Alice Springs prison 10 years ago. There are 75 in there now. And majority of them Aboriginal women, and unfortunately violence is predominantly one of the main issues amongst many others. And Alice Springs prison for women is a horrible experience because it's essentially a block in the middle of a men's prison. And very little happens because they're in and they're out, and there's really no support for them. Nothing's changed before, you know, really from when they get in to when they get out. Yeah. So there's a gap, and we actually found some funding to do that. And we will continue to run a couple of programs in that prison. Thank you.